Hey friends, welcome to Dishing on Divorce Beach Edition on WGSN-DB Going Solo Network Radio, Podcasts, and TV. I'm your host, Lisser, CEO and founder of LZL Coaching, a boutique coaching firm focused on divorce, relationships, and life transition. As a recovering lawyer, a current educator, a spiritual counselor, and a divorce coach who's committed to changing the divorce experience for everyone involved, I'm here to be your guide on the side, emotionally, strategically, and with an eye toward your future. Recently, there's been a lot of press about divorce coaching as the new path toward divorce success. From the New York Times and the New York Post to just today on Axios DC, where one of my guests is quoted in an article about DC's new breakup trend of hiring a divorce coach. Word is getting out that divorce can be different if you seek the right support, in this case, a coach to walk by your side. On today's show, I've gathered 3 of the most impactful coaches I know. We all train together at DCA Pre-Mediation Divorce Coaches, and we are all graduates of the CDC Divorce Coaching Certification Program. These are women who are experts in the field. We all care deeply. We've all experienced our own divorces, and we want to make the experience less painful for everyone going through the process. We want you to know that though it may feel overwhelming to take that first step and call one of us for help, we know from experience that hiring your divorce coach first, particularly someone who's trained to work in the divorce arena, that's your most effective way to reduce costs, emotional overwhelm, and the time involved. With that in mind, let me welcome my guests, Alex Kapp, Michelle Hanney, and Kathleen Burgler. We are an actress, a lawyer, a yogi, and an M&A negotiator, and we all experience divorce in our lives. We bring our whole selves to this divorce work because our experience taught us that there has to be something better, and we're delivering that service to you. So let's talk.
Thank you.
Hi, Lisa. Why? Let's all talk at the same time. So this is the thing. When we get together, we like throw out a topic and we just go. And that happened before we even opened this as a podcast. So I want to just open the door that way because it's our second time around as a podcast roundtable. And I want each of you to sort of share your journey from the last session to now, but really who you are, where you're located, what's your expertise, and how you got into this work. Just a little. So why don't we start with Alex, because you're in the top corner.
Okay, good. So I am Alex Kapp. I am what it says below, CDC Certified Divorce Coach, a high conflict coach, and a pre-mediation coach. And I'm actually trained as a mediator as well. But I started out in Los Angeles, which is where I'm based, as an actress. So for many, many years, too many to count, probably 30, I've been on television. I was on Seinfeld, I was on Friends, Will and Grace. I was on a show called The New Adventures of Old Christine for 5 years, which hilariously, the premise of which was a woman who was single, raising her child as a single mom and divorced and very good friends with her ex-husband who starts dating a new woman named with the same name. So there's a lot of similarity in my life, art imitating life. But I got into divorce coaching after my own divorce in 2014. When I went through the process, I had 2 best friends who were going through it with me. But years after that, divorce coaching sort of fell into my lap. I got trained in part because I wished I'd had a coach myself. Divorce is such an overwhelming thing to go through. It changes your whole vision of your future. It's the death of a dream of what was to be. And to have to do it alone with no guidebook, nobody helping you walk the path, it's almost impossible. So that's really the main reason I got into coaching.
Great. Thank you so much. And The New Adventures of Old Christine, it's so amazing that sort of the universe brought you back because your ex-husband is dating an Alex or is married to an Alex.
Yes, my ex-husband is engaged to an Alex. He had and it doesn't matter. He was with Alex before the end of my marriage. So it was a kind of ironic. In fact, the second person I reached out to when I found that out was the showrunner for The New Adventures of Old Christine. And she wrote me a very curse-laden response, which was hilarious. Like, you got to be kidding me, is really what she said. So yes, it is a funny cocktail party story that I still tell to this day.
Well, thanks for sharing it with us, because it's a thing. It's really a thing.
And it should speak to the fact that I am now 10 years away from that whole experience. You can tell I'm not particularly traumatized by it anymore, but it was a long process to get there. Part of which has been helped by my own coaching other people. Like, that has helped me recover a lot faster from my own divorce. So,
amazing.
It's a journey.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Kathleen, tell us your story. And where are you?
Where am I? I'm north of Seattle, and most of my clients are in the Seattle Puget Sound area. And I have a slightly similar story in that my divorce, I'd been a health coach for a number of years when my divorce happened. And it was really the coaching skills for me that I kind of they just clicked in really reflexively. And so there was the disintegration of me and who I thought I was. Like Alex was saying, like, it changes the landscape of what you thought things were going to be or what you think they are. And so that part was happening. And at the same time, my superpower of compartmentalizing went into overdrive. And my coachy self just kicked in and said, okay, how are we going to do this? Who are you going to be through this, et cetera? I was really fortunate in that we did find a great divorce coach, and she was absolutely the key to getting through our divorce the way, with as little bloodshed as we did. And she was the one that encouraged me to look into it. She's like, you would do great with this work. And so I switched gears, got out of healthcare, and did that instead. And I have found working with individuals and within groups that it doesn't necessarily, I don't know if it would say that it heals me, but it reinforces all of the lessons that I've gleaned from either working with the coach through my divorce process or kind of working with myself. And I put those things, as much of those things as I could, into a workbook that I've self-published last year, that I have a lot of attorneys that buy it for their clients and stuff. And as a way to just keep the momentum going, to not say, okay, I've signed the papers and now everything's fine. So yeah, that's kind of my nutshell.
That's great. So you know what, Kathleen, you can put the workbook info into our chat, and then maybe Cece can bring it up at the end so that our audience can see it. That would be great. And Michelle Hanney, the superstar interviewed woman, coach, DC, whatever, share with us.
Thank you. Well, my pre-divorce coaching life, I worked in consulting and M&A. So needless to say, I had a lot of experience with people matters and then those sort of complexities and then how to deal with things strategically. But as many others, I did go through a very long, protracted divorce with children. And I just so wished I'd had a divorce coach. I really, I looked to my attorney for emotional support and direction and guidance, and always seeking that emotional justice, which is never going to come through divorce. And I mean, that's really why I was, dead set on trying to find a way to get certified. So I went and trained with the CDC and then various others, the high conflict divorce coach program, and then the pre-mediation where we all met. And I am probably one of the biggest, at least in my life, one of the biggest cheerleaders for mediation, because I do focus on high conflict, and was able to settle my 3-year high conflict divorce via mediation. That I feel it's such a powerful tool. So I'm also a mediator, and I just we all wish we can come into people's lives early or before they decide to divorce, but I typically come in when there's a lot of fire to be put out, but we can dream to go earlier in the process. But that's how I got here, and I was excited that Axios DC wrote an article because, more than ever, there's so much savings. And then not just talking about financial, but financial is huge by working with a divorce coach, but it's the emotional turmoil it takes on you. If you can have someone that can maybe strategically test your wants and your needs. And the other thing is that in my divorce, I never looked past my divorce. It all ended there. And it took so long to rebuild emotionally. And that was 11 years ago. And so that's all behind me, thankfully. But it's having someone keep telling you to look forward, which I think is so powerful when you work with a coach who can just keep you on that path and test those ideas that you have.
I mean, this is the reason we all got into the work. I talk a lot about Simon Sinek's why. What's your why? What's your purpose? And all of us had experiences that were difficult. Even with a divorce coach, it couldn't have been easy. It was easier than ours, but I knew it could be different. And I knew that I was so afraid that I couldn't do it differently without someone holding my hand. And maybe I even had the wrong people holding my hand, but I didn't know that because I didn't realize that everyone in my family had a stake in my divorce because they had a relationship with me being a married person, with my ex-husband who I met when I was 20 in college. And by the time our divorce was over, we'd been married 24 years. So this is a lot of bandwidth of relationships and it ripples. But when I became a divorce coach and my dad and mom were saying, oh, so this is what Lisa's doing now. My dad's first cousin, Joel, who got divorced 40 something years ago, came up to me at some holiday and said, what you're doing is so great. I had no support. I was the bad guy. No one, I had no one to talk to. And it could have been different. And I think that's something that we all say people tell us when they hear we're a divorce coach. They're like, where were you when I got divorced? And
all the time.
All the time, right? So that's why we're in this room now to sort of share more about going in depth about our why, because that's how our clients find their why.
Yeah.
Right. That's how they find what is really most important to them. So they know how to do this work. So, if you had to say who needs a divorce coach and, when should they hire them? I know what you would say, but let's all have a voice in saying it. Okay.
Everyone.
At
any point.
At any point.
Yeah.
Pre-post divorce for sure.
Right. At the beginning is great, but it's not necessary. I think anyone who's overwhelmed, anyone who's never been through it before, anyone who's afraid, anyone who is worried about finances, anyone who feels like they don't understand their family's finances, or they're the breadwinner, or they're the stay-at-home parent. I mean, literally anybody. I think that's what we're all saying.
The way that I think of it is that, for most people, divorce is it's your first time. You don't know the lay of the land. You don't know the terrain. You don't know the language. You're entering into this maybe with your sister's experience on your mind, or your best friend's experience on your mind, or your parents, what you experienced from your own parents, and TV. So you think, oh, you're just going to go in and it's going to be this, and then it's going to be that, and then somebody's going to do this, and then you're done. And it's, God, it can move so slowly. It can be this glacial, just brutal pace. And what I learned was that even with the coach, if I hadn't been advocating for myself, if I hadn't known, whatever reserve was still kind of, glowing in my heart, I would have been lost. I would have been railroaded. And so that's such a key piece of what we bring to the table for clients, is to help them move into that state of self-advocacy, of understanding it's your process.
Well, and also just if I can add to that, Kathleen, that's such a great point. But most of us at the end of our marriage are kind of a mess. I mean, we're in a bad marriage that isn't working. Here we are staring down the barrel of this terrifying procedure and process that we don't understand. But it's also part of what we do as divorce coaches is help people understand who do they want to be. You have an opportunity to become whoever you want to be after this divorce. And we were just talking about this. It's not just the divorce decree. It's years of patterns, years of being sort of in a relationship that maybe wasn't as healthy as it should have been. And now you're in a position where we help you find your best self. We help you find out who you are, but operate out of your core values so that you can look back on how you handled your divorce and say, hey, I'm really proud of how I did that. I'm really proud of how I handled the kids. And I hope my kids will be proud of me based on how I behaved. And it's something I think all of us are constantly refocusing on with clients is, who do you want to be? How do you want your kids to see you 10 years from now, 20 years from now, at their weddings, at whatever event? How do you want them to look back on how you behaved? And that's part of what we help people find in themselves.
Correct. Yeah. And the other thing people don't realize is, or not always think about, is that, when anything we can do to reduce the conflict is important, because once the divorce ends, you're still going to be co-parenting if there are children involved. And that could be another 10 years, where you're still going to have to do exchanges and deal with graduation and all those sorts of things. So you have to not just, there's a world beyond the finish line, and it's about.
Yeah. And I think that the reason that we are so hooked on the way divorce goes is from things we grew up with, like the movie, The War of the Roses, where that was like, the worst possible, but it was the only experience I had heard of.
Right.
And which they just remade, by the way.
They did?
Like they needed
but it's got a great cast and it looks great.
That's a whole other topic, remaking old movies. We can't have new ideas.
Right.
I loved the Four Seasons the first time around. The second time around, it was just much longer. It was just much longer.
I had to turn it off in the free. Yep. I did. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yep. So there's that. But I think that one of the things that being divorce coaches and serving this role that was never filled before in this way is because we're changing the story. We're changing the story of divorce because it doesn't have to be the movie, The War of the Roses. Now, we all know and have heard of conscious uncoupling and this idea that, Gwyneth Paltrow and Chris Martin had this amazing divorce and they were so first of all, I'm not sure it was a perfect divorce. I'm sure that it was less contentious than most, but it's still a divorce. And they chose to respect each other, which is what we hope people will do. But in many of our client situations, it's not what happens.
Well, she has a brand to protect too. And we don't know what it was like behind closed doors.
We don't.
I think we've all heard, I think it was one of the women that trained us, Tracy Callahan, always talks about, toxic positivity. I don't think any of us sitting here has any illusion of pretending that divorce is going to be fun, easy, painless, none of that. It's divorce, excuse my language, but divorce sucks. It does. I don't care how you slice it. There is grief associated with it. There's loss, both financially, our children, all these things. But we can make it a little less sucky. So,
it's number 2 on this, just under death of a spouse, on the scale of most stressful life events. Like, it's not nothing. And you can be as zen and blissed out and, up here and heart focused and whatever other terminology you want to use. You can be that. It does not negate the disruption to your world, to your life, to your nervous system, to your body, your health. Especially when there's kids in there, right? Yeah. Minor children, I don't care how zen you are. Their world has just been completely shattered.
Yes. Yep. So we have to take a quick break. And this is just how it goes. Our conversations just run and they run away, but in such an amazing, powerful way. So we will be back in 30 seconds after a word from our host. And we're back with Team Divorce. We talked about that a while back, but we have Alex Kapp, Kathleen Burgler, and Michelle Hanney. So what I wanted us to go toward now was the topic of kids and how divorce coaching can help you as you navigate this turf with the kids in mind. So we all have different experiences with different clients and within our own lives. So I want to throw the topic out there. How does a divorce coach help you if you have kids?
Well, I'll say something. I mean, I'll start because I think having kids makes divorce a completely different animal. I think there's so much emotional weight attached to, I don't want to lose my children. It's not fair. I want them all the time. Their dad's a jerk or their mom's a jerk, and I don't want them to have anything to do with them. Our impulses as we're going through the early stages of divorce and processing our own emotions, it's really potentially damaging to our kids if we can't see the wider picture. And the wider picture is, in most cases, not all, that children are healthier when they have relationships with each of their parents. But for me with clients, it is one of the hardest things to get across to people. And it was really hard for me because I was really angry at my ex-husband, and I wanted him to feel punished for his bad behavior. So that greatest punishment of all is you don't get to see your kids. But I never acted on it. I felt it. I thought about it, but I never acted on it because I knew in my soul that it was the right thing to do. What a divorce coach can help you do is not act on it, but also give you that broader perspective, because you're not always going to be this upset and angry. You won't. Time will help some of it. Therapy will help some of it. And ultimately what you want is for your kids to be healthy and have healthy relationships. It doesn't mean pretend everything's fine. It just means in most cases, kids should be able to have a relationship with both parents going forward.
And adding on to that, I mean, teaching also clients the reality of the family court system, and that ultimately you don't want to judge deciding the future of your children, and that it is taking that time and putting them first, no matter how horrible your divorce is, but putting the children central and finding a way to reduce the conflict so that you can get to a talking basis. But there is so much hurt in divorce that, people want to go in and get the bulldog lawyer and go after them. And it really can turn out in a very opposite way that is not in the best interest of the children. So it's really reality testing their ideas. I keep going back to that, letting them get it all out, but really tell them the reality of the system, which is essential.
But I think that reality testing is a really great image. That part of what divorce coaches do with their clients that is so helpful is walk them through, what does that look like if we reality test it? Exactly. What does that really look like for your family? Are you never going to want to go out at night ever? So what does having the kids 24/7 really mean? And, that's where we do some work that is not easy, but can give people clarity.
Well, and that's sort of that reframe too, of bringing it around to, because when you're in that emotional state, particularly if you've got the push-pull about the kids, and you want to be a little bit punitive, and it's like you're just steeped in negativity. You're steeped in, maybe it's aggression or resentment or, whatever, payback, whatever it is. But how do you find the positive? And like Lisa, what you were saying is, what's it going to look like if you have them all the time, forever and ever? What's your life going to look like? Walk me through a day, walk me through a week.
Right.
And one of the things that I like to bring up too, sort of in that same vein with parents, is that they're the parent, they're the grown-up here. And they may feel like that reflexive, acting out and being mean and cruel, and you may feel it. And like Alex said, she never acted on it. So how do you come back to that discernment of, okay, I feel all this crap towards the other grown-up, but here's the kids, and I want to keep them not in a bubble, but I want to keep their world as safe, secure, and intact. intact, meaning where the love and
And so what does that look like when your client says to you, you know, he's a narcissist, he has been gaslighting and emotionally abusing all of us. They need to know that that's who their dad is, and I need to protect them from that person because, I don't want them to suffer like I suffered. So that's like a story that, some of us might have heard or been familiar with.
Oh my God, every time. I mean, almost to a fault, every single consult I've ever had has been, I'm divorcing a narcissist. He's been gaslighting. He's emotionally abusive. I need to protect my kids. I will have a quick answer to that. First of all, I want to clarify. I didn't never act on my bad impulses. That sounds like I'm I acted on some. So I just want to be clear about that because I don't want anyone to think they're going to do a perfect job at divorce because we're not going to do it. But what I will say is that well, first things first, I want to clarify for an audience that I think what people aren't recognizing, and Kathleen, you just mentioned like a judge, right? What I think everybody assumes is that you're going to go to a courtroom and a judge is going to decide the future of your family picture, of your finances. Our goal, as all of us as divorce coaches, is to never be in front of a judge because we believe that everybody has the power to negotiate their own settlement agreement with their spouse, that we all are grown-ups and that we all have the power and can find the power in ourselves to be good negotiators. That is also what we help people do. So I want to be clear. We're trying to change also the messaging of, we don't want you to go to court. We don't want you to pay the hottest shark lawyer in the world so you can go sit in front of a judge. Because guess what? If that judge doesn't like you, if you look like the judge's ex-wife or ex-husband, you're at the mercy of one person's decision making. That person doesn't know your whole story, doesn't know your family dynamics, but you do. So I wanted to kind of make sure that we put that out there up front. Divorce isn't just hire a lawyer and have them do everything. You are in charge of how this goes.
To tag on to that, if they do it that way, how often are they ending up back in court because they didn't take the power themselves and negotiate in good faith. They didn't create their outcome. They yielded it to some higher power, being a judge, and nobody's happy with it. Everybody's coming back to court.
It's your divorce.
Right. It's your divorce. That's Michelle, you're right. And what we have learned and seen in the real world is that when people write their own agreements and make their own decisions, those agreements stand up and stand the test of time. When people have rules foisted on them, they break them. And then they fight, and then they're back in court. So I had one story where someone said they were surprised to hear that my divorce took so long, which is, a rude thing to say regardless, right? But then she shared that her divorce took 1.5 years, but they were in court for 4 years afterwards because they couldn't stop fighting. So I'm like, okay, let's balance this one out. It's not a comparison, but it's also about how do you honor the agreement and what kind of agreements can you honor? And we're all talking about mediation because we are trained to prepare people for mediation and to do the mindset shift that says, I'm going to start with my eye on agreement, not with my eye on adversarial. And that's a whole different way of approaching the process. This is a business deal.
Yep.
It happens to involve your family. And so maybe it's the most important business deal you're ever going to do.
Yeah.
But I heard this also. Marriage is about love, but divorce is about money. And how do we shift so we see there's still a family involved that needs the love? So we gotta build it in somehow.
And there's a lot of black and white. I'm sorry, Michelle, you go. I feel like
No, go ahead.
I was going to say there's a lot of black and white thinking when people come to us. I speak for all of us. When people are he's evil, I'm good. He's a terrible dad, I'm a great one. And I'm using women because I mostly coach women. I coach men too, but either direction, there's a lot of black and white thinking. It's very hard to remember the person you married 15, 20, 25 years ago when you're in the middle of an adversarial separation. So it's also our job to sort of help remind people, look, you loved this person once, you created these children. What do you want for your family going? What do you want for these children? Do you want them to hate their dad? Does that help them? What does that look like down the line? It doesn't help the kids. It doesn't. And you asked a question before that I kind of changed the subject on, but the simple fact is we can't protect our children from everything. We can't. So if you think you're divorcing a narcissist who's been gaslighting you and emotionally abusing everybody, some of that may be true. But at the end of the day, what I will say to clients and what I said to my own kids was, you have to navigate your own relationship with this person and with me. So you're going to grow up. And as you grow up, you're going to have to decide for yourself, how do you want your relationship to look with you, with me, with your dad? What does that look like for you? I can't protect them from everything. I mean, none of us can do that. So it's really about, hey, let them form their own opinions too. Let them come to their understanding of their parents somewhat on their own too. They're human beings. And so they deserve to have their own opinions. You can't, as you used, great word, we can't foist ours on them. I guess that's
right.
the point.
Right.
And that comes back to being the grown-up, right? Just like developmentally appropriate depending on the age and all of that. But yeah, I love that, Alex.
And I can't tell you how, I mean, I do work a lot in high conflict, and I can't tell you how many times it goes really wrong, because divorces are ugly and horrible things happen, and there's a lot of hurt. And if you can help clients to acknowledge their hurt and their peace and their suffering, but also get them back into a strategic mindset, because if they really are involved in the family court, they need to get a strategic mindset on, and they need to be emotionally regulated. And even if they collapse when they get home out of court, you need to have, because you are judged in court. The judge will look at you. If you're a hysterical mess, they're going to think you're the problem. And, it's really preparing, depending on what type of divorce. I mean, the high conflict ones, you have to really give them that understanding of what they're getting into, and that there is a more peaceful way, because either way the divorce will end eventually, and they will have to potentially co-parent. And again, it goes back to that reality testing. Like, you're mad, you want to throw a book at him, and you want all his money, but you know what, is that really realistic? No, it's not. And if you want to pull in a gal and a psychological evaluation and all these types of things, you have to be ready for the same thing being thrown back at you, and you need to be able to navigate that. So it's a lot of reality testing.
Well, there's a lot of reality testing, but there are so many elements that are part of every divorce. And lawyers think they know all of them, or certain lawyers. I won't give all lawyers a bad name, but lawyers who are litigators are adversarial. That's their job. And so you go to that person, and that's how it's going to be. Even when they tell you that, oh, I can get you a mediator, we can mediate this, they're still looking at it from an adversarial perspective. And that's why, again, starting from a space is, let me coach myself. I'm dysregulated. I don't know where to turn. And maybe a coach will help me just get off the ledge for right now. And one of the things that I really try to do for my clients is I give them permission to stand for themselves. Right? So many women don't know that they're allowed to. And I even have male clients who also feel bullied and feel like they have no choices. But what we do is help them know, you are allowed to stand for yourself. You've been taking care of everybody, and you're the one who fixes everything. And now is the time for you to take a deep breath and recognize that you have things that you're entitled to as well. And it's not about your rights, but it's about your integrity.
Yeah.
And so I help them regain that sense of themselves. I don't want to reinvent them. And I don't want to say that they're creating a new future, because most of them have it inside of them. It hasn't woken up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it's funny, because I have so many clients who'll say, I just feel like I have no control over any of this. And what's interesting is we don't have control over our ex-spouse and their behavior and how they communicate and their anger and their emotional dysregulation. but we do have control over ours, and it does make a difference. One person can change the dynamic. It doesn't have to be both, because if we change our dynamic with them, they have no choice but to follow suit. For instance, an example, if somebody's picking a fight with me and says, you're a crazy bitch, and excuse my language, and you're trying to steal the kids from me, and I get to choose how I respond to that, which will then impact that person's response back to me. I can engage, I can fight back, I can sling insults and say, well, you're a narcissist, but where's that going to get us? So it does. One person can change how the communication works in the whole family, and it's worth learning those tools.
Yeah,
that's what divorce coaches do, is help teach those tools.
Yeah,
so.
The tools of the disruption of the patterns. Like, I think of it as grooves, like a well-worn ruts in a dirt road, and that's what brought you here. You're getting divorced because you both are in those ruts, and there's communication breakdown, and so it's like empowering somebody to just start to move to a different angle and see things from just a slightly different angle, and to what would it be like if you didn't engage when they are, but I can't not engage. Well, what would it be like if you didn't? Let's do a little role play. And then to have just that, like Alex, it just disrupts, it gets one person out of the rut, and that person might still be traveling down there, but there's no interaction. We've just changed the dynamic.
100%.
I love it.
Yeah. Michelle, because we're getting close to the end. So these are like our last words.
No, not the end.
No, I mean, and just being able to give a client, like you say, these other little tidbits that we can offer, and they come back the next time and they're like, oh my gosh, I would never have considered that. And it's just so gratifying that, because it could have turned such a different direction, that we can provide that opportunity to reduce the conflict and potentially the pain for all. So
yeah. And this is about neuroplasticity. What we're not talking about touchy-feely crystal therapy, right? Although that can work, right? It can work for some people. But the science tells us that when we shift our patterns, we are creating new neural pathways. So the old neural pathways of the dance we've been doing with that partner for all of those years, that's the rut. That's the deep rut. And it's easy to go down that path. It's harder to find a different path, which is why doing it with a coach will help you stay on the new path. And then the more you walk that different path, the deeper the groove. Yeah. And that's how our nerves are created.
And it leads to such a beautiful new place, someplace that you've never been before.
Yeah. It spreads out beyond your divorce. That you can become, I mean, I think all of us feel that power of like what you said, Michelle, of like, oh my God, it worked for my client. She changed something. And it's like, you get this feeling of like, and that can work with bosses, with children, with friendships, with anything. It's this idea that we are going back to a beginner mindset, that we are going to try something different. It also keeps us young mentally. It's just admitting, hey, I don't have all the answers. So let's just try something different. Let's see if that works any better. Yeah. And it's totally gratifying when it does.
The thing is, when you are in one way of being, it's not just in your marriage. It extends everywhere, because you have the mirror neurons. Your body is telling you that you have to behave a certain way. But when you start shifting it, your thoughts change, but your whole demeanor changes. And when your body shifts, everything changes. And I know that's something we all believe in. And we are so at the last few seconds, but we're going to have another talk.
Yes.
Back online.
We can talk forever.
We can talk forever. So why don't you each tell my audience where they can find you, and then we'll be back. So start with Kathleen, because your name is up.
I'm KathleenBurgler.com. Best way to find me. My workbook, Forge Your Path, is on Amazon. There's links to another marketplace on my website.
Great. And Michelle?
Michelle Hanney. I'm at divorcedifferently.biz. That's probably the most direct way to find me.
Great. And Alex?
I'm Alex Kapp, and you can find me as of this coming Friday, but at alexkapp.com. I'm rebuilding my website. And I'm Googleable because of, so you can go look up my other things too.
Okay. And I'm Lisa Lisser. You can find me at lzlcoaching.com, and you can email me, lisa@lzlcoaching.com. I love today's conversation. Like, we should do this every day.
Awesome.
It's so nice.
At least once every 3 months.
Yes.
Exactly.
So I think I'll make that promise, and we'll book for the next time. But to my audience, thank you so much for listening. You're listening to Dishing on Divorce on WGSN-DB, Going Solo Network Radio, Podcast, and TV. See you next time.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.